The first time I saw a human weapon, I laughed so hard that my secondary breathing tubes spasmed. Commander Velkor had called an emergency briefing aboard the ISS, Relentless, and every species in the Galactic Coalition had sent representatives. We gathered in the observation deck, our various appendages folded, coiled, or resting as we watched the holographic display flicker to life. This, Velkor announced, his mandibles clicking with barely contained amusement, is what the humans call a sword. The three-dimensional image rotated slowly, a length of sharpened metal. No plasma cores, no molecular disruptors, no quantum destabilizers. Just metal. Pointed metal. My colleague, a Threxian named Quillmore, made a sound like grinding gravel. It was laughter. You cannot be serious. This is a museum piece, yes? From before they achieved sentience? Negative. Velkor's eye stalks drooped with something resembling pity. Intelligence reports indicate they still manufacture these. They call it tradition. I felt my chromatophores shift to a pale blue, the Zenthari equivalent of a smirk. Let me understand this correctly. We are meant to fear a species that brings sharpened iron to a battlefield where we deploy singularity bombs? There is more. Velkor manipulated the display. Another primitive artifact appeared. This is called a bow. Someone in the back made a choking sound. The weapon was absurd. A curved piece of wood with a string. You pulled the string back, released a pointed stick, and hoped it flew toward your enemy. I had seen Vorgothi children with more sophisticated toys. Commander, respectfully, said Mira, a Colossi diplomat whose scales shimmered with indigo skepticism. Why are we wasting time on this briefing? The human homeworld, Earth, has been identified for assimilation into the Coalition. They possess rudimentary fusion drives, basic energy shields, and apparently an armory that belongs in an archaeological dig. This should take, what, 3 solar cycles? 2, someone called out. More laughter rippled through the assembly. Velkor said nothing. His silence was unusual. The commander was a Drakthus, a species known for their tactical genius and their inability to tolerate fools. He had led successful campaigns against the Korathi swarms and negotiated the surrender of the Plexian Empire. If he had called this meeting, there was a reason. The human civilization, he began slowly, is classified as Stone Age transitioning to Nuclear Age. They have been spacefaring for less than 70 of their years. Their military technology is laughably primitive by our standards. However, the Coalition Council has requested a detailed tactical assessment before we proceed with contact protocols. A detailed assessment? Quillmore's vocal sac inflated with derision. Commander, I could assess their entire military capacity during my morning meditation. They are babies playing with sticks. Perhaps. Velkor's tone remained neutral. Nevertheless, we have deployed reconnaissance drones to observe their military exercises. The footage is educational. We were looking at an Earth landscape, what humans called a desert. Tan sand stretched in every direction under a harsh yellow sun. A group of human soldiers, perhaps 20 of them, moved in formation across the terrain. They wore fabric uniforms, carried projectile weapons that used chemical reactions to propel metal slugs, and communicated through radio waves that any competent hacker could intercept in seconds. Primitive, Mira observed. Then the exercise began. The humans split into 2 groups. One took defensive positions behind sand dunes, while the other prepared to assault. I watched with the detached interest of someone observing an antique timepiece, curious about its mechanical workings but never questioning its obsolescence. The attacking group moved forward. They used smoke grenades, actual smoke, not photon dispersers. They coordinated through hand signals when their radios supposedly failed. They threw explosives that detonated on impact rather than phasing through shields. And then something strange happened. One human soldier, separated from his unit, found himself surrounded by 3 opponents from the defending team. His projectile weapon had run out of ammunition. The logical choice was surrender. The tactical choice was retreat. Instead, he drew a knife from his belt. Not an energy blade, not a molecular cutter. A knife. Sharpened steel, maybe 20 centimeters long. My colleague Quillmore made that grinding sound again. Oh, this is rich. He is going to fight 3 armed opponents with the human moved. It was not the graceful, economical motion of a trained galactic marine. It was explosive, brutal, and absolutely terrifying in its efficiency. He closed the distance to the first opponent in less than 2 seconds, deflected the training weapon with his forearm, and placed the knife against the other soldier's throat. Exercise over. That one was dead. The second opponent fired, but the human had already moved, using the first body as a shield. He rolled, came up beside the second soldier, and eliminated him with a strike to the kidney. The third opponent actually started backing away, weapon raised, but the human pursued with a relentlessness that made my skin prickles with discomfort. 15 seconds. The entire engagement lasted 15 seconds. The observation deck had gone very quiet. The hologram continued playing. We watched more exercises. Humans rappelling from aircraft. Humans breaching fortified structures. Humans conducting underwater demolitions. Humans parachuting into hostile territory. Every piece of equipment they used was at least 500 years behind current galactic standard. Every tactic they employed relied on physical endurance, pain tolerance, and a disturbing willingness to close to melee range rather than maintain safe firing distances. They still teach hand-to-hand combat, Velkor said into the silence. Every human soldier, regardless of specialty, receives extensive training in unarmed fighting and bladed weapons. It is considered essential. But why? Mira's question echoed what we were all thinking. Why waste time on skills that are obsolete? No modern battle requires... Exactly. Velkor's eye stalks focused on her. No modern battle, by our standards, requires such skills. The question we must ask ourselves is simple. What kind of species continues to perfect the art of killing with primitive weapons long after they have invented alternatives? What does this say about their fundamental nature? I felt my chromatophores flicker between colors, unable to settle on an emotion. Unease, maybe. Or the first whisper of something darker. Quillmore broke the tension. It says they are sentimental fools clinging to the past. Commander, with respect, this does not change the fundamental equation. They are technologically inferior. We have plasma cannons that could level their cities from orbit. We have cyber warfare capabilities that could shut down their entire power grid. We have biological agents that... Yes. Velkor waved a manipulator appendage dismissively. We have all of these things, and I am certain the Council will note your enthusiasm in the records. However, I suggest we continue the briefing before making final assessments. The hologram changed again. This time we were looking at historical footage, judging by the primitive quality of the recording. The date stamp indicated it was from approximately 80 Earth years ago during what humans called World War II. This is a human conflict, Velkor explained. Approximately 60 million of them died. Notice the weapons. We watched in silence as grainy images showed human soldiers advancing through ruined cities, across beaches, through forests. They carried rifles that would jam in mud. They drove tanks that could be disabled by a present lucky strike. They flew aircraft that required physical piloting and could be shot down with simple ballistics. And yet, they fought, for years, across entire continents, with a ferocity that made the footage difficult to watch. This is madness, someone whispered. This is humanity, Velkor corrected. Now, observe this particular battle. It is called Iwo Jima. The footage showed a small island, volcanic rock, and black sand. Human soldiers attempting to land on beaches, while other humans fired down from elevated positions. The casualties were staggering. Bodies in the water, bodies on the sand, explosions that threw more bodies into the air. Any rational military force would have retreated, would have reassessed, would have found another solution. The humans kept coming, wave after wave. They used flamethrowers, weapons that sprayed burning liquid. They used grenades. They used bayonets, which were knives attached to rifles for close combat. They fought for every meter of ground. The battle lasted over a month. Thousands died for a piece of rock, barely 8 square kilometers in size. Inefficient, Mira said, but her voice lacked conviction. Inefficient, Velkor agreed, but effective. They took the island. Now, here is where it becomes interesting. This is footage from their training facilities. Current day. The hologram showed human soldiers practicing the exact same tactics, landing on beaches, clearing fortified positions, fighting in confined spaces with knives and improvised weapons, training for battles that, by all logical assessment, should never occur in modern warfare. They are preparing for an enemy that does not exist, I said slowly. Or, Velkor's mandibles clicked with approval. They are preparing for any enemy, including enemies they have not yet met, including enemies with technology far superior to their own. The implications hung in the air like a bad smell. We were the superior technology. We were the enemy they had not yet met. Quillmore shifted uncomfortably. You are suggesting they might resist assimilation? Commander, their entire military could not stop a single coalition dreadnought. This is mathematical fact. Mathematical facts, Velkor said, have a way of becoming irrelevant when biology enters the equation. Let me show you one more thing. The final hologram was recent footage, recorded just 3 local days ago according to the timestamp. It showed a human military base, something they called Fort Keller. We watched soldiers conducting routine drills. Then, without warning, an alarm sounded. The humans immediately grabbed weapons and took defensive positions. The entire base transformed from training mode to combat readiness in under 2 minutes. There was no actual threat, Velkor explained. This was a surprise drill. Notice the response time. Notice the fact that every human, from the commanding officers to the maintenance crew, armed themselves. Notice that they defaulted to weapons that require no power source, no ammunition, no technology beyond sharpened metal and human muscle. One of the soldiers on screen, a young female with her hair tied back, was checking her rifle. When she finished, she drew a knife from her boot and tested the edge against her thumb. A drop of blood appeared. She smiled, wiped the blade clean, and resheathed it. She had deliberately cut herself to verify the weapon's sharpness. The pain was not a deterrent, it was quality control. My chromatophores had settled on a very pale green. Among Zenthari, this indicated fear, though I was not yet ready to admit that to myself. I have been studying human history, Velkor continued, and I have found a pattern. Humans name their historical ages after the materials they used to kill each other. The Stone Age, when they used rocks. The Bronze Age, when they discovered metal alloys. The Iron Age, when they perfected iron smelting, primarily for weapons. They measure their civilization's progress by improvements in their ability to commit violence. That is disturbing, Mira said. That is reality. The humans call their ancient period the Stone Age, but they are wrong about when it ended. Every human soldier still carries the Stone Age with them. The willingness to pick up a rock, a stick, a piece of sharpened metal, and use it to kill. They have simply added nuclear weapons and aircraft carriers to the arsenal. They have not replaced the primitive tools. They have supplemented them. Quillmore's vocal sac had deflated completely. What is your recommendation, Commander? Velkor was quiet for a long moment. On the screen behind him, the human soldier who had cut her thumb was now laughing with her companions. sharing some joke we could not hear. She looked young, harmless even. Her species had only recently figured out how to leave their own solar system. They had no shields, no energy weapons, no quantum drives, and yet I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. My recommendation, Velkor finally said, is that we proceed with extreme caution. The Coalition Council wants Earth integrated within 2 solar cycles. I suggest we extend the timeline and invest heavily in cultural analysis before making first contact. We need to understand what we are dealing with. You mean who we are dealing with? I corrected quietly. They are sentient beings, not a tactical problem. Are they? Velkor's eye stalks fixed on me with unnerving intensity. I am not certain anymore. I have watched hundreds of hours of footage. I have read their literature, their poetry, their philosophy. Humans have a saying, God created man, but Samuel Colt made them equal. Do you know what that means? We waited. Samuel Colt invented a primitive projectile weapon called a revolver. The saying means that, regardless of physical differences in size, strength, or ability, a weapon equalizes the playing field. Anyone can kill anyone if they have the right tool and the will to use it. Humans find this concept not horrifying, but inspiring. They celebrate it. The briefing concluded shortly after, but none of us left immediately. We stood in small groups, exchanging quiet observations, watching the holographic recordings loop in the background. Human soldiers training with knives. Human civilians learning self-defense. Human children playing games that simulated hunting and combat. I approached Velkor as the crowd thinned. Commander, your assessment seems overly cautious. Yes, they have a violent history, but so do most spacefaring species. The Korathi were ritual cannibals before they achieved faster-than-light travel. The Vorgothi had a 300-year war over a religious disagreement. Violence is not unique to humans. No, Velkor agreed. Violence is universal. But humans have made an art form of it. More than that, they have made it personal. When a Korathi goes to war, it is for resources or territory. When a Vorgothi fights, it is for ideology. When a human fights, he trailed off, manipulating the hologram controls. Another image appeared. Rows upon rows of names etched into its surface. The camera panned slowly, showing hundreds of thousands of names. This is a memorial to their dead from a single war. They build these monuments. They teach their children the names. They have ceremonies where they read aloud the names of soldiers who died generations ago. They remember, personally, every individual who fell. Not as statistics, as people. I stared at the endless list of names. That is actually rather touching. Is it? Velkor turned his eye stalks toward me. Or is it terrifying? They remember their dead, yes, but more importantly, they remember how to kill. Every tactic, every weapon, every hard-won lesson, purchased with blood. They do not forget. They do not move on. They preserve it, refine it, pass it down through generations. A human soldier today trains using methods perfected on battlefields 1,000 years ago. Tradition? I said weakly. Preparation, Velkor countered. They are preparing, always preparing, for the next war, because they assume there will always be a next war. He closed the hologram. The observation deck plunged into the dimmer ambient lighting. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, I could see the curve of a nearby planet, purple and serene. I have spent 40 cycles studying military history, Velkor said quietly. I know the patterns. Aggressive species burn themselves out. Peaceful species get conquered. Technological species rely on their advantages until someone develops a counter. But humans, they are adaptable in a way I have never encountered. They can be sophisticated or savage, advanced or primitive. They switch between states, not over generations, but instantly, as the situation demands. You think they will resist assimilation? I think, Velkor said carefully, that if we approach this incorrectly, we will learn exactly why Earth calls that early period the Age of Iron. And I think that lesson will be written in our blood, not theirs. I left the briefing with much to consider. My quarters aboard the ISS Relentless were modest, designed for a Zenthari physiology. I settled into my rest pod and attempted to process the information, but sleep would not come. Instead, I found myself accessing the ship's database, searching for more information about Earth. Their planet was beautiful, in a chaotic way. Vast oceans, diverse biomes, weather patterns that regularly killed hundreds with hurricanes, tornadoes, and tsunamis. And yet, humans built cities directly in the paths of these disasters. They rebuilt after destruction. They stayed. I read about their sports. Many involved simulated combat. Others involved endurance challenges that would hospitalize most species. Some, incomprehensibly, involved both. I read about their entertainment. Their most popular stories were about war, survival, and overcoming impossible odds. Their heroes were soldiers, warriors, and rebels who fought against superior forces. I read about their child-rearing practices. Human children were encouraged to take risks, to compete, to test themselves against challenges. Playground equipment was designed to teach them about gravity, pain, and consequence. By the age most species were still in protected nurseries, human children were climbing structures several times their height and learning that falling hurt. Everything about their culture seemed designed to produce survivors. Not philosophers, not artists, not scientists. Survivors who could think, create, and build, yes, but survivors first and foremost. The communication panel in my quarters chimed. I activated it, and Quillmore's face appeared on the screen. He looked agitated, his skin flushed darker than usual. "Have you been researching the humans?" he demanded without preamble. "Yes. You as well, I take it?" "I cannot stop. There is something wrong with them," I found a human saying. "Walk softly and carry a big stick." "Do you know what it means?" "I assume it involves actual sticks?" "It means be polite and diplomatic, but maintain the capacity for overwhelming violence. It means smile while keeping your weapon ready. It means never let your enemy know your true capabilities until you need them." Quillmore's eyes were wide. "They have a philosophy of deception built into their diplomatic framework." "Quillmore, you are overreacting. Many species maintain military readiness while pursuing peace. Not like this. I found their military doctrine. They have something called mutually assured destruction. The concept is simple. Build enough weapons to guarantee that if someone destroys you, you can destroy them even after you are dead. Make yourself so dangerous that attacking you is suicide. That is insane. That is humanity. And here is the terrifying part. It worked. They had two major powers, both with nuclear weapons, both ready to annihilate each other. And they did not. They maintained this balance of terror for decades. They lived their entire lives, knowing that at any moment their species could be extinct, and they just continued. Had children, built cities, made art, as if apocalypse was simply another weather condition to plan around. I had no response to that. We talked for a while longer, sharing discoveries, each revelation more unsettling than the last. When Quillmore finally disconnected, I sat in darkness, thinking, Velkor was right. We needed to understand these beings before we made contact, because they were not like us. They were not rational actors who would see the benefits of coalition membership and join peacefully. They were survivors, fighters, beings who had spent their entire evolutionary history preparing for threats. And now, whether they knew it or not, the threat had arrived. The Galactic Coalition was coming, with our superior technology, our advanced culture, our offers of peace and prosperity. I wondered what the humans would do when they realized that their Stone Age weapons, their Iron Age tactics, and their primitive military might were all that stood between them and assimilation. I wondered if we had made a terrible mistake by assuming this would be easy. The human soldier on the screen, the one who had tested her knife's edge on her own thumb, had smiled as she cut herself. Not a grimace of pain, a smile of satisfaction. The weapon worked. The weapon was ready. I realized, as I finally drifted toward sleep, that humans had been ready for us for a very long time. They had been ready for something like us since they first picked up rocks and used them to defend their caves. We had better technology, better ships, better weapons by every measurable metric. But they had something we did not, something we had evolved past or never possessed in the first place. They had the willingness, the eagerness, even, to bleed. I dreamed of stone, knives and iron swords, and of a young species that had named an entire age after its ability to kill. When I woke, I knew Velkor was right. This was not going to be easy at all. 3 cycles passed before the Coalition Council approved Velkor's extended timeline, and in those 3 cycles, everything changed. Not with humanity, they continued being exactly what they were, but with us, with how we saw them, with how we understood what we were about to do. I spent those cycles studying. So did Quillmore, Mira, and a dozen other analysts assigned to the Earth Project. We compiled reports. We built psychological profiles. We created tactical assessments that grew longer and more complex with each passing day. And then the Council, in their infinite wisdom, rejected our recommendations. Contact would proceed as scheduled. 2 dreadnoughts, the ISS Relentless and the ISS Dominion, would enter Earth's orbit and broadcast a message of peaceful integration. Standard protocol. They had done it 100 times before, with 100 other species. Commander Velkor accepted the orders without argument. He was a soldier, after all. But I saw his mandibles twitch in a way that suggested deep unease. The day of first contact arrived with no ceremony aboard our ship. We simply dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system and began our approach. The plan was straightforward. Enter orbit around their homeworld, broadcast a message in their dominant languages, wait for their governments to respond, demonstrate our technological superiority through a harmless display of power, accept their inevitable surrender, and begin integration protocols. Simple, clean, efficient. I was on the observation deck when we passed their moon, a gray satellite pocked with craters. Humans had actually landed there using chemical rockets, a feat of engineering that was simultaneously impressive and absurd. They had planted flags and left footprints, and returned home to celebrate, all for a barren rock. Earth came into view, and I understood immediately why humans fought so hard for it. The planet was stunning. Blue oceans covered most of the surface, interrupted by green and brown continents. White clouds swirled in patterns that suggested active weather systems. It looked alive in a way most worlds did not. Beautiful, is it not? Mira had approached without me noticing. Her scales had shifted to a contemplative silver. We were about to find out. The Relentless and Dominion took up positions in high orbit, deliberately visible to any observation equipment the humans possessed. Within minutes, our sensors detected increased radio chatter from the surface. Their defense networks had activated. Primitive radar systems tracked our ships. Military bases around their planet went to alert status, exactly as predicted. Fear first, then curiosity, then negotiation. Standard pattern. Velkor activated the communications array. The message we broadcast was simple, translated into English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and a dozen other Earth languages. Greetings, people of Earth. We are representatives of the Galactic Coalition, a union of 743 civilized species. We come in peace to offer you membership in our alliance. Please respond on this frequency. We wish to negotiate the terms of your integration into galactic society. We waited. Silence from the planet below. Their military channels buzzed with activity, but no official response came. Not for 20 minutes. Then 40. Then an hour. They are conferring, Quillmore said. Trying to present a united front. Or preparing a defense, I murmured. Defense? Quillmore's laugh was forced. Against what? We could glass their planet from here. They must know that. Knowing and accepting are different things. Finally, a response. Audio only. No video. Ah, human voice. Male. Speaking English with a flat accent that our translators identified as North American. This is General Marcus Holt, United Earth Defense Command. We have received your message. We request 48 hours to prepare an appropriate response to your offer. Velkor's eye stalks twisted in surprise. 48 hours? That is unusually quick for a planetary government to reach consensus. Perhaps they are more unified than we thought, Mira suggested. Or perhaps, I said quietly, they already have a response prepared. They have been watching our ships approach for hours. They knew we were coming before we broadcast anything. Velkor considered this. General Holt, we acknowledge your request. You have 48 of your hours. However, we must insist that all military forces stand down during this period. Any aggressive action will be interpreted as rejection of our peaceful intentions. A pause. Then, negative. Coalition vessel. Our defense networks remain active. We have no intention of attacking you, but we will maintain readiness. Call it a cultural preference. The communication ended. Velkor made a sound like grinding metal, the Drakthus equivalent of a nervous laugh. Cultural preference. They are holding us at gunpoint while negotiating. Gunpoint? Quillmore scoffed. They have nothing that could harm us. Their most advanced weapons are nuclear missiles that our shields could deflect indefinitely. Yes, Velkor agreed, but they do not know that for certain. And yet, they refuse to stand down. That tells us something important. What does it tell us? That they would rather die fighting than appear weak, even when the fight is unwinnable. Those 48 hours were the longest of my life. We monitored Earth constantly. Their military did not stand down. Instead, it mobilized. Soldiers moved to defensive positions around major cities. Naval vessels formed protective formations around coastlines. Aircraft carriers, those floating military bases that humans somehow kept operational in ocean water, positioned themselves at strategic points. Most tellingly, their nuclear arsenals went to high alert. Missiles in underground silos, submarines lurking in deep water, mobile launchers hidden in remote terrain. They had enough atomic weapons to render their own planet uninhabitable, and they had armed every single one. Madness, Quillmore whispered as we watched the displays. They will destroy themselves before they let us conquer them. Not conquer, Mira corrected. Integrate. We are offering them peace, technology, prosperity. Yes, but on our terms, under our authority. Perhaps from their perspective, that is conquest, regardless of what we call it. I thought about the monuments with all those names, the soldiers who trained with knives, the culture that measured progress by weapons technology. They have never been conquered, I said slowly. In their entire history, no outside force has ever successfully subjugated their entire species. Empires have risen and fallen on their world, but there was always resistance, always someone fighting back. It is literally all they know. Velkor had been quiet, watching the tactical displays. Now he spoke. 41 hours remaining. I want continuous monitoring of their military assets. And someone get me detailed information on this United Earth Defense Command. When was it formed? How did they achieve global military coordination so quickly? The answer came back within the hour, and it was disturbing. The United Earth Defense Command had been established 6 years ago. 6 years. right around the time humans had achieved their first successful faster-than-light probe. They had reached out into the galaxy, sent a tiny unmanned vessel to a neighboring star system, and immediately afterward had unified their entire military structure under one command. They had assumed, correctly, that if they could reach the stars, so could others. And they had prepared for the day when those others arrived. "They have been expecting us," I said to no one in particular. "Not us specifically, but something like us. They knew this day would come." End quote. "Paranoia," Quillmore muttered, but his vocal sac had deflated again. Or wisdom. From their perspective, first contact with aliens could go two ways: peaceful or hostile. They prepared for both. The question is, which category do they put us in? We got the answer at the 47-hour mark, 1 hour before their deadline expired. General Holt contacted us again, and this time he included video. The human was old by their standards, with gray hair and a face creased by years. He wore a military uniform covered in decorative insignia. Behind him, I could see other humans in similar uniforms, representing different nations judging by the flag patches. They all looked calm, composed, and utterly unafraid. "Commander Velkor," Holt began, "we have reviewed your offer. We appreciate the opportunity to join the Galactic Coalition. However, we have some concerns about the terms of integration." Velkor's mandibles clicked in what might have been relief. They were negotiating. That was good. "Please state your concerns, General. We are open to discussion. Our primary concern is sovereignty. Your standard integration protocol requires new member species to surrender military authority to Coalition command, submit to Coalition law, and accept Coalition oversight of technological development. Is that correct?" "It is. These measures ensure stability and prevent conflicts between member species." "I see. And what happens if a member species refuses integration?" The question hung in the air. Velkor hesitated, just for a moment. "That has never occurred, General. The benefits of Coalition membership are self-evident. No rational species has ever refused. But if one did, hypothetically, then economic sanctions would be imposed, trade restrictions, quarantine from galactic commerce. Eventually, the species would reconsider." "Eventually," Holt nodded slowly. "And if they still refused? If they preferred isolation to submission?" "Submission is a harsh word, General. We prefer integration." "Answer the question, Commander." Velkor's eye stalk stiffened. I had never heard anyone speak to him in that tone. If a species adamantly refused integration and posed a security risk to the Coalition, military intervention would be considered. However, this has never been necessary. Every species has seen reason. Seen reason or been forced to comply? General Holt, I assure you. Let me save us both some time, Commander. Holt leaned forward, and his eyes, those strange human eyes with their whites and colored irises, fixed on the camera with an intensity that made my chromatophores flicker. "We have spent the last 47 hours analyzing your ships, your technology, your language patterns, and your diplomatic protocols. We have consulted with our best scientists, strategists, and historians, and we have reached a unanimous conclusion, which is, we decline your offer." The observation deck went silent. Every being present froze. Decline? They were declining Coalition membership? That was impossible. No species declined. The benefits were too great. The alternative was isolation, technological stagnation, eventual irrelevance. Velkor recovered first. The Coalition represents nearly 3/4 of known sapient species. We offer access to trade networks spanning thousands of systems, medical technology that could cure every disease plaguing your species, energy solutions that would end your resource conflicts, educational exchanges that would advance your science by centuries. You would refuse all of this? We would. Because the price you ask is too high. You want our independence, our right to self-determination, our freedom to make our own choices, even if they are mistakes. And that is not for sale. Then, would you choose isolation? We choose sovereignty. We will develop at our own pace, make our own discoveries, and solve our own problems. If the coalition wishes to engage with us as equals, we are open to discussion. But we will not be absorbed. We will not be integrated. We will not surrender our freedom to anyone, no matter how advanced, how powerful, or how well-intentioned. Velkor's voice took on a harder edge. General, you are making a decision based on pride, not logic. Your species is in its infancy. You need guidance, protection, structure. We need freedom, Commander. Everything else, we will figure out ourselves. That is what we do. That is what we have always done. You are condemning your species to struggle when you could have prosperity. Then, we will struggle. Humans are very good at struggling. Holt smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. We have done it for our entire existence, and we are still here. Still growing, still learning. We will be fine. Mira had moved to stand beside me. She whispered, "They are actually going to refuse. They are actually going to choose the hard path." "Of course they are," I whispered back. "They always choose the hard path. It is their nature." Velkor was not finished. "General, I must be blunt. If you refuse integration, the Coalition Council may decide that an uncontacted human presence represents a security risk. Your species develops quickly. Your military capabilities, while primitive now, could pose a threat in the future. The Council has authorized me to ensure that Earth does not become a destabilizing factor in this region of space." "Is that a threat, Commander?" "It is a statement of fact." Holt nodded slowly. "Then let me respond with a fact of my own. We are transmitting to you detailed scans of our current military deployments. Every base, every ship, every weapons platform. You should receive the data in a few seconds." Our systems chimed. The data package arrived, and our analysts immediately began processing it. What we saw made no strategic sense. The humans had just given us a complete map of their defenses, positions, capabilities, weaknesses, everything we would need to conquer their planet. "Why?" Quillmore asked. "Why give us this information?" Then the second part of the transmission arrived. Video footage, multiple streams, humans in underground bunkers, checking equipment, submarine crews running through launch sequences, mobile missile units moving into firing positions, and everywhere, those primitive backup weapons, rifles, pistols, knives, humans loading them, checking them, preparing them. "This is what you need to understand about us," Holt said, and his voice had gone very quiet. "We know you can destroy us. Your technology is far superior. If you decide to attack, we will lose. Our cities will burn. Millions will die. Maybe billions. And we cannot stop that. Then, why resist? Because we can make you pay for every inch of our world. We have 4,200 nuclear weapons, Commander. Some are on missiles, some are on aircraft, some are on submarines that you will never find. And if you attack us, every single one of those weapons will launch. Not at our own planet. At your ships. At any coalition vessel in our solar system. At any facility you try to establish on our moon or Mars, we will throw everything we have at you. Your nuclear weapons cannot penetrate our shields," Velkor said, but his voice was uncertain. "Maybe not. But you will have to maintain those shields constantly. You will have to watch your back every moment. And while you are dealing with nuclear missiles, our conventional forces will be fighting on the ground. Every city, every town, every farm. We have 3 billion people capable of fighting. That is not our military. That is our total population old enough and healthy enough to hold a weapon. 3 billion humans who will not surrender, who will not negotiate. Earn every meter of ground with blood and fire. The observation deck was so quiet, I could hear my own breathing tubes working. And if you manage to conquer us despite all that, Holt continued, you will not have won. You will have occupied a planet full of hostile survivors, who remember, we will resist. Sabotage. Assassination. Guerrilla warfare. We have thousands of years of experience with insurgency. We know how to fight when we are outgunned and outmatched. We know how to bleed an occupying force until they give up and leave. We have done it before. We will do it again. Holt leaned back, and when he spoke again, his tone was almost conversational. You called this the Age of Iron, Commander. You were mocking us, I think, laughing at our primitive weapons. But you missed the point. We call it the Age of Iron, not because of the weapons themselves, but because of what they represent. Iron is strong. Iron endures. Iron can be beaten and shaped, but never truly broken. That is what we are. That is what we have always been. He paused, letting the words sink in. So, here is my offer. Leave. Go back to your coalition council. Tell them Earth wishes to remain independent. Tell them we are not worth the cost. Because if you stay, if you try to force us to join you, we will show you exactly what happens when you bring plasma cannons to a knife fight with people who are very, very good with knives. The transmission ended. We stood in silence, processing what we had just witnessed. A species barely capable of interstellar travel had just threatened 2 coalition dreadnoughts. They had promised to fight a losing battle purely on principle. They had chosen certain death over uncertain servitude. And somehow, impossibly, the threat felt real. Velkor turned to his tactical officers. Assessment. If we engage human military forces, what are our projected casualties? The lead tactician, a Colossi named Renth, hesitated. Commander, by every metric, we should suffer 0 casualties. Their weapons cannot harm our ships. Our shields are impenetrable to their technology. That was not my question. I did not ask what should happen. I asked what will happen. Renth's scales rippled with uncertainty. Unknown, Commander. Their willingness to fight, despite impossible odds, introduces variables we cannot account for. They might develop new tactics. They might discover unexpected vulnerabilities in our systems. They might simply refuse to die when logic says they should. Human behavior does not follow predictable patterns. So you cannot guarantee 0 casualties? No, Commander, I cannot. Quillmore made a sound like choking. This is absurd. We have conquered species far more advanced than humanity. The Korathi had energy weapons. The Plexians had quantum shields. Both surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. But we are actually considering retreat from a species that still uses gunpowder? The Korathi and Plexians were rational, I said softly. They calculated the odds and surrendered when defeat was inevitable. Humans are not rational. They are emotional, stubborn, willing to die for concepts like freedom and sovereignty. You cannot negotiate with that. You cannot intimidate that. You can only kill it. And even then, you are never sure it is really dead. Mira had pulled up the historical files we had compiled. Commander, I have been reviewing human military history. In every major conflict, the side with superior technology did not always win. The humans have a phrase, asymmetric warfare. It means using unconventional tactics to negate technological advantages. They are masters of it. If we invade, they will not fight the battle we want. They will fight the battle they can win. There is no battle they can win against us, Quillmore insisted. We could bombard their planet from orbit and never risk a single soldier. And then what? Velkor asked. We rule over ashes? We integrate rubble? The Council wants Earth's resources, both material and biological. They want a compliant population contributing to the coalition. If we glass the planet, we gain nothing. And if we invade to preserve infrastructure, we commit ground forces to fighting 3 billion enraged humans who have been perfecting the art of killing for their entire existence. He pulled up a tactical map of Earth. Look at their terrain. Mountains, jungles, urban sprawl, underground tunnel systems, thousands of places for insurgents to hide. We would need to occupy and pacify an entire planet, maintain supply lines across hostile territory, and do it while under constant attack from enemies who do not wear uniforms and do not distinguish between military and civilian targets. Vietnam, I said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at me. It was a human conflict. A technologically superior power invaded to prevent political integration they disagreed with. They had aircraft, helicopters, chemical weapons. The defenders had rifles and determination. The war lasted 20 years. The technologically superior power lost. One example, Quillmore protested weakly. Afghanistan. The Soviet invasion. 9 years. Superior firepower. Lost. The American occupation. 20 years. Superior everything. Lost. These are not ancient histories. These are modern conflicts with modern weapons, and in each case, the invaders eventually gave up because the cost was too high. I looked at Velkor. General Holt knows all of this. He is betting we know it too. He is betting we will decide Earth is not worth the price they will make us pay. Velkor was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with resignation. There is another factor to consider. Precedent. If we attack Earth, and the campaign becomes costly, other species will see that the coalition can be resisted. Our authority depends on the perception that resistance is futile. If humans prove otherwise, if they make us bleed, the entire structure of the coalition could be threatened. So we do nothing? Quillmore asked. We let them defy us? We let them have their sovereignty. We report to the Council that Earth has declined integration but poses no immediate threat. We recommend a non-interference policy with provisions for diplomatic contact as equals, not subjects. And we quietly, very quietly, make a note in the strategic database that humanity is not to be provoked. The Council will not accept that. The Council was not here. They did not see what I saw in General Holt's eyes. They did not hear the absolute conviction in his voice. I will make them understand. And if they order me to proceed anyway. Velkor's mandibles clicked slowly. Then I will request reassignment. Because I am a soldier, not a fool. And only a fool invades Earth. The decision was made. We would withdraw. But first, Velkor insisted on one final communication with the humans. I thought it was a mistake, but I was wrong. General Holt, Velkor said, when the channel opened, the coalition has decided to honor your request for sovereignty. We will withdraw from your system and recommend non-interference status for your species. Holt's expression did not change. That is wise, Commander. However, I feel compelled to offer a warning. The galaxy is not empty. The coalition represents most civilized species, but not all. There are dangers out there. Pirates. Slavers. Things worse than the coalition. Without our protection, we will handle it, Commander. The same way we handle everything. With determination, improvisation, and weapons that you think are obsolete, but we know are timeless. You understand? You are choosing a difficult path? Commander, we have never known any other path. Difficulty is our default state. We will be fine. Velkor paused, then said something unexpected. General, may I ask a personal question? When I threatened you, when I told you we could destroy your world, you did not flinch. How? How do you face extinction with such calm? Holt smiled, and this time it was genuine. Because we have faced extinction before, Commander. Ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, plague, famine, war, ourselves. We have stood on the brink so many times that we have learned something important. Being afraid does not keep you alive. Being too stubborn to die keeps you alive. We are a species that should have gone extinct a dozen times over. But we did not. We endured. We fought. We survived. And we will keep surviving long after species with better technology have faded into history. That is impressive and terrifying. It is human, Commander. Just human. Give my regards to your council. Tell them Earth thanks them for the offer, but we will write our own destiny. And tell them that if they ever change their policy on equal partnerships, we will be happy to negotiate as friends. And if they do not, then we will see them in another 100 years, when our technology has caught up to yours, and at that point, Commander, the conversation will be very different. The transmission ended. Velkor ordered the fleet to withdraw. As we pulled away from Earth, I watched the blue planet recede through the viewport. Somewhere down there, 3 billion humans were standing down from combat readiness, celebrating their victory over an enemy they could never have actually defeated. Except they had defeated us. Not with weapons, not with technology, with sheer bloody-minded stubbornness and the willingness to pay any price for their freedom. They are insane, Quillmore said, standing beside me. They are human, I corrected, and I suspect that in a century or two, when they do achieve technological parity with the coalition, we are going to regret not making them friends today. You think they will seek revenge? No. I think they will seek respect, and they will keep seeking it until they get it. Because that is what humans do. They do not accept no for an answer. They do not quit. They do not surrender. They adapt and overcome and persist until reality itself gets tired of fighting them and gives up. Mira joined us at the viewport. Commander Velkor is filing his report. He is recommending Earth be classified as a protected developing civilization with provisos for future contact when they achieve advanced spaceflight capabilities. That could take centuries, Quillmore said. Or decades, I said. Humans are motivated now. They know we are out here. They know they are behind. And if there is one thing humans are good at, it is catching up when they are behind. They will reach the stars, Quillmore, sooner than we think. And when they do, they will remember this day. They will remember that we tried to assimilate them, and they said no, and they made it stick. Should we be worried? I thought about the soldier testing her knife blade, about the monuments with all those names, about the species that measured its ages by the weapons it used to kill. Not worried, no. Humanity does not hold grudges against those who respect their strength. But we should be cautious. And if we are very, very smart, we should be preparing to welcome them as equals when the time comes. Because the alternative is making enemies of a species that never forgets, never forgives, and never stops fighting. The ISS Relentless jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving Earth behind. But I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, not with advanced science or sophisticated diplomacy, but with a simple, ancient message. We are here. We are free. And we will fight anyone who tries to take that freedom away. The age of iron, indeed. And the galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. Somewhere behind us, on a blue planet orbiting a yellow star, humans were putting away their nuclear weapons and their chemical rifles and their sharpened knives. But they were not abandoning them. They were storing them, maintaining them, keeping them ready. Because humans understood something that most civilized species had forgotten. Peace is not the absence of capacity for violence. Peace is the choice not to use that capacity. And the freedom to make that choice is worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth threatening aliens with Stone Age tactics and Iron Age determination. I filed my own report that cycle. In it, I noted that humanity had declined integration, and that the decision should be respected. I also noted, for the record, that any future contact with Earth should proceed with the assumption that humans are not to be underestimated, not to be threatened, and absolutely not to be conquered. Because we had learned something important that day. Technology changes, civilizations rise and fall, but some things, some fundamental aspects of a species, remain constant. And humanity's constant was simple. They were survivors, fighters, beings who would face overwhelming odds with nothing but primitive weapons and refuse to back down. The Galactic Coalition had better ships, better weapons, better everything. But humanity had something we had lost millennia ago: the willingness to bleed for what they believed in, the courage to stand against the universe itself and declare their independence. And in the end, that made all the difference. The Age of Iron had not ended. It had simply expanded its battlefield to include the stars. And the galaxy would never be the same.